going to be talking just a brief, because when we talk about research area, then it's another platform that require a vast explanation. But I'm just going to tell you a bit of research area in sociolinguistics. So if you do sociolinguistics, what studies can you use? Okay, and then we're also going to be talking about the methods. Okay, research methods in sociolinguistics. How do you do research in sociolinguistics? This is also, of course, a very brief attempt, because this will require a long and laborious, more adequate explanation than just introduction. But this is an introduction just to give a global illustration. So let's start with the emergence of sociolinguistic study. Okay, let me ask you something. Besides this sociolinguistic study, what other branches of linguistics have you studied in the previous semester?
Phonetics.
Phonetics, yes.
Syntax.
Do you have psycholinguistics too? Syntax, yeah. Right? You have syntax, psycholinguistics, others?
Psycholinguistic, not yet, ma'am.
Oh, psycholinguistics. Oh, this semester. Oh, yes. So we're doing it, you're doing it at the same time.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay then. Okay. So throughout the time, history has recorded different fashions, different ways of grasping, of understanding the knowledge of language. So linguistics, at its simple, the most simple definition, is a study about language, right? And its aim is to get the knowledge of the language. And then through times, there are developments of how experts try to understand the knowledge of language. Okay, it dated back in the years. Okay, if you already have introduction to linguistics, I think that you might be familiar with the development. Okay, starting from a linguist in India, Panini, for example, who started to codify Sanskrit in 500 BC. And then in early 18th century, for example, you start to see how experts start to talk about or try to understand the relations between ancient languages, right? Languages like Sanskrit, like Greek, and see them as prototype language and see their evolution as how they are used nowadays, or how they are deployed and nowadays used throughout the globe, okay? Or something that right now is established as historical comparative linguistics. So in historical comparative linguistics, you actually try to compare the ancient languages and see how they evolve into the sub-prototypes languages nowadays. Okay, that's another fashion of getting the knowledge of language. Ya, jadi ada beberapa cara orang mencoba memahami bahasa itu apa, gitu. And LHK salah satu caranya, ya. And then there's also an attempt of trying to explain the internal structure of a given language. Jadi, an internal structure dipelajari. Bahasa yang mereka gunakan itu the structure, the linguistic structure, they try to understand the structure of the language. Yeah. And then we also know, and one thing that that marks the modern linguistics is that a generative grammar that is claimed, proposed by Chomsky. Okay, so Chomsky, in his attempt to understand language, Chomsky thinks, or what he thinks linguists should do to understand language is that when we try to understand language, we try to decipher knowledge about language that deals with our competence. What is meant by our competence is actually how our mental process generate grammar. Ya, bagaimana cara otak kita? Chomsky kan sangat terkenal dengan universal grammar, gitu. That we have system that in our brain there's installed a system that enable us to generate certain set of language system, gitu. And what is proposed by Chomsky, apa yang dipropose oleh Chomsky itu adalah bahwa if you want to understand the fashion of language, you need to see how your mental process the language. Produknya adalah the grammar that you see in right now. If you're quite familiar with grammar because it's prescribed in a lot of grammar books, ya. Jadi menurutnya Chomsky, yang dinamakan oleh bahasa, pengetahuan bahasa adalah kompetensi bahasa. What is language competence? Our ability, our mental ability, our cognitive ability to generate systems of language. Nah, itu yang dipelajari. Ya. However, this proposition made by Chomsky received a lot of criticism. Okay, it also received a lot of criticism, and it opened a way for sociolinguistic study to sociolinguistic study to develop. Ya, jadi dari pemikiran Chomsky ini mendapat banyak kritik. The language competence mendapat banyak kritik, sekaligus membuka jalan untuk munculnya sociolinguistic study. Now, it's done in my time. Do you want me to stop first or do you want me to continue? It's now done in my place. Do you want me to continue or do you want me to stop first? I do not know about your place.
I think stop first is going to be the best way.
Okay, then I will do that. Okay, let's give us 2 minutes to just stop first. Okay, is it now safe to start the discussion again?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Now, so where were we? Sampai mana kita tadi? Okay, here. Okay, Chomsky's view and perception in what fashion does Chomsky think we need to learn the knowledge of language? So the knowledge of language refers to language competence. how human generate systems of language through his mental process. This receives criticism and opens way for sociolinguistic study to develop. Why? What kind of criticism does it receive? Okay, Chomsky himself stated this, that if we want to observe the language use or the knowledge of language, we need to observe that the language that is spoken by the ideal speaker. What is meant by ideal speaker is that they are both competent and has a similar subset of grammar, and also it has to be observed in completely homogeneous community. Now, what kind of criticism is then addressed to this? Okay. Now, a lot of experts, especially sociolinguistics experts, would point out that this kind of condition, the ideal speaker listener and homogeneous community, in fact, is not real. Okay, it is not real. So, it is not real, and it is definitely, in realities, they are not how languages are used. There is no such thing as ideal speaker listener that has the same competence and then living in homogeneous community. Later in sociolinguistics, it is also proven that nowadays it is very difficult to find homogeneous community, because our community right now have turned into, if not bilingual, multilingual. It is very hard to locate a community that is not either bilingual or multilingual nowadays. So yes, the criticism roots from the impossibility of observing such language in realities. And Pinker also added that Pinker challenged this by stating that there is no thing, because there is no such thing, because real language is being pushed and pulled at the margins by different speakers in different ways. So our forms are not stagnant. Our forms are very dynamic. Okay, that is why, on the basis of that thoughts, on the basis of that criticism, on the basis of that notion, what is sociolinguistics? Sociolinguistics, then, it is a study which is different from Chomskyan linguistics. If Chomskyan linguistics focus on the language competence, then sociolinguistic focus on language performance, because it reflects social realities even more accurately. Okay, so we focus in real language in use, the knowledge of language as how it is used by its speakers. Okay, so if Chomsky asked what's language, we in sociolinguistics ask, what do we do with the language? That's what we're asking. How do we use the language? Okay. Okay. So now let's talk about what is then being studied in sociolinguistics. If you do sociolinguistic study, what kind of design, not design, but what is the fashion in sociolinguistic study? So it is important to once again remind ourselves that sociolinguistics captures how language is used in society. Okay, the use of language by society is seen as social realities. Okay, what is meant by social realities is that the language that they use reflect their conditions as members of certain community. Okay, one example or some example. When we study about refusal strategy use our expressions, our language to refuse offer. Some studies have found that women use more indirect refusal strategies than men. Okay, so this is what studies in sociolinguistic find. So what they find is some generalizations of how language is used in society. For example, if we also see about gender, we can try to see how men and women differently distribute the use of adjectives, or differently choose the the choices of, or the types of adjectives, for example. Okay, or the use of hedges, or the use of I do not know. I've never read about nouns, but I've read about adjectives, different distribution and use choices of adjectives and hedges and adverbs. Okay, so you see some patterns here, right? That that certain category in a community use language in different fashions. Okay. However, it is also important to remember and to always remember that in doing sociolinguistic study, we do not just try to find these patterns. Jadi kalau mau belajar melakukan penelitian sociolinguistics, itu tidak hanya kita itu mencari generalizations atau bentuk bagaimana bahasa ini digunakan dalam komunitas. It is also important to be able to explain how the variables, the social variables, and the social structure are responsible for the emergence of this pattern. Layer yang kedua ketika kamu melakukan sociolinguistic study adalah how are these social structures responsible for such emergence? Ada apa dalam social structures ini? Oke, jadi contohnya seperti ini. Kalau ditemukan, contohnya perempuan, women use more empty adjectives than men, atau women use indirect strategies, more indirect strategies of refusal than men, then we have to ask, what's the perception of community on the role of gender that is responsible for such emergence? Kenapa kok begitu? Apa persepsi komunitas terhadap gender sehingga bisa menjadi seperti itu? That possibly explain that. Yeah, so that's what we do in sociolinguistics. Okay, so to conclude, the study of sociolinguistics tries to account for, tries to explain how these societal norms are intertwined with our language use. The societal norms, societal structure, the social variables are intertwined with our language use. Yeah, I'm going to give you one easy example of how sociolinguistic study is different from other branches of linguistic study. Okay, misalnya, one example is that you observe that babies, when the first word that babies made, okay, from the babies that you observe, the first word that the babies made is mama, for example. Mama, for example. Atau dada, for example. Ummi, okay. Now, if you do it under the lens of psycholinguistics, for example, how we acquire language, yeah, the mental process that's taking place in acquiring language and how we process language? The answer might be, mungkin, atau secara fonetics, mungkin kenapa mama? Karena beban fonetiknya itu jauh lebih ringan karena organ bayi, the speech organs are not developed well. It's easier to say daripada t, misalnya. Yeah. But that is under the lens of psycholinguistics. But under the lens of sociolinguistics, we do not try to see the mental process. We try to see to what happens to the environment of the baby. Who is always next to the baby? And what the community thinks of who needs to be always with the baby. For example, if the community, if the rule in the community governs women to stay at home and take care of the children, then this intense interaction will result in the first production of the word, that is mama. Okay, it might be different if the rule of the in the community in perceiving the gender role doesn't really require a woman, a mother, to stay with the baby. It might result differently. Now that is how you do observation on the basis of sociolinguistics. So sociolinguistics tries to account for the language use, language phenomenon on the basis of how our societal structure, norms, and variables are responsible for it. Okay. Now, okay. Let's now talk about the important keywords. What are the concepts or the words that you are going to frequently find here in sociolinguistic study? In learning sociolinguistics, doing sociolinguistic study, moreover later when you do a sociolinguistic research. Okay, now these keywords need to be always made clear. Okay, we are going to have a brief discussion here because the talk about community, the talk about language, dialects, regional dialects, idiolects, the talk about variations, be it from the phonetic variations, morphological variations, accents. We are going to allocate certain weeks to discuss about that. Okay, it's just for you to remember that these words, you should always remember that these words are important in defining sociolinguistic study. Okay. One keyword is community. Okay, it is hard to detach sociolinguistics from community. Why? Well, it is sociolinguistics. You talk about society and language, how language used by society. Now, why is the concept of community very important to be remembered by those people studying sociolinguistics? Because in explaining the pattern of the language phenomenon that you get, that you observe, it is important to explain the environment of their emergence. Karena ketika kamu melakukan studi sosiolinguistik dan kamu menemukan, ada fenomena bahasa seperti ini. Misalnya, kamu menemukan fenomena bahasa penggunaan transliteration, tetapi a mix between English and Indonesia, or English and local language, dan kamu mau tahu apa yang menyebabkan kemunculan dari ini, you need to know where is the environment that it's taking place in, di mana itu terjadi. Karena talking about environment is very important because you are talking about the profiles of the members of the community who are using the language. Berbicara tentang environment-nya itu sangat penting, community-nya sangat penting. Kenapa? Karena kamu harus menjelaskan kalau fenomena itu terjadi, siapa yang menggunakannya. Who are saying this? Without knowing or specifying who are speaking this, it's going to be really hard for you to find what's responsible for this. Kamu kan mau melihat how they perceive the social variables. Kalau nggak tahu orangnya, siapa yang menggunakannya, it's going to be difficult. That is why talking about community, the place, the group where the language phenomenon happen is very important. Nah, the knowledge about community itself is very vast. Karena kalau kita berpikir community, a group of people who are bounded together, that's it. It's not that simple. Explaining about community, it's not that simple. And our types of community are now evolving. Jadi kalau dulu yang terkenal adalah speech community, tapi kemudian ada community of practice. Okay, so we have we need to define community clearly supaya kita tidak salah menarik kesimpulan. Okay, and then we also need. Tolong ditutup-tutupakan. Sorry. And then we're also going to talk about language, dialects, and others. Now, this is important because, again, our unit of analysis is language. Okay, at least it's called a language, but it's more complex than a language itself because the words that we're saying and we're writing, we do not easily label that as language. Okay, we have other subsets too. For example, dialect. So what's actually the unit that we're being analyzed? Is it language? Is it dialect? Or what's the safe way of labeling language and dialect? How to safely label certain code as language or dialect? Now we also need to understand this. We also need to understand this notion also. And also variations. Okay, variations in its very simple, in its most simple meaning, it refers to different structures for expressing the same meaning. Okay, different structures for expressing the same meaning. So variations can vary from its the smallest linguistic units to the level of utterances. So yeah, the smallest linguistic unit might be is phonology, the sound. Yeah, we have a lot of variations here. If you talk about Javanese language that it's used in Java, they are different. For example, what do you call? Oh my God, I forgot the term. It's not inflection. What do you call akhiran in English? Sudah lama nggak ngajar morfologi ini. What do you call this?
Suffix.
Yeah, suffix. The suffix, the Javanese, the suffix that we have in different parts of Java are different, right? Here, you say rungok no, and then in different parts of Java you say rungok ke, and then rungok no, rungok ke, things like that. So that's a different phonological variation. Yeah. Now, variation in sociolinguistics is very central because the language we use every day is remarkably varied. Okay, not just across different speakers from different groups, but also across speakers, individual speakers. That's why we have something that we call idiolect. Yeah. Nah, those important keywords. Okay. And then the speakers and their groups. What lies between them? What lies between speakers and their groups? Okay. Now we have identity. Okay. So if you want to study what lies between speakers and their groups, you can also study about identity. Because language is used to construct identity. We use our language to construct our identity. Our identity is the impression of affiliation that you want to be affiliated with. Ya, kita kan anggota dari community nih. Ya kan? But our community, the community that's attached to us, it is not just one community. We have several communities that we are affiliated with. Now, we use languages to show people our identity that we want to affiliate with. And that's why we say that language is used to construct identity. Okay. Now, language is used to construct power. Okay. The ability to control events in order to achieve one's aim. We use our language to exercise power. And then it's also used to construct solidarity, which is motivations which cause individuals to act together and to feel a common bond which influence their social actions. Okay, often through language. So your language can be used to flaunt, can be used to showcase your power, either power or solidarity. So it's power or solidarity because if you remember, Bourdieu said that in a community, the distribution of power is never equal; it's unequal. Okay, so this is what lies between speakers and their groups. Another concept is about language and culture. Okay, now why culture is also central in sociolinguistics. Now, what is culture? Culture itu apa? What is culture? Do culture refers to the artifacts like dances, like food, traditional foods, traditional songs, traditional dances? How do you make meaning of culture? Bagaimana kamu menginterpretasikan atau memandang budaya? What is culture?
I think culture is the characteristics and knowledge.
Sorry, I need to find you, so please.
RC, it's RC.
Okay, I need to go back up. Okay, wait, RC, there you are. Yes, RC.
I think culture is the characteristics and knowledge of a particular group of people encompassing language, and religion, cuisine, social habits. It also could be like music and arts. Something like that. That's what I know from what culture is.
All right. So, knowledge about people. Culture is knowledge about people, about the life aspect of people.
And
is
characteristics.
That what you're saying? And characteristics of people. Okay. So, yes, culture. To say that culture is knowledge about people, it seems that it's because you're seeing it in other people, as another person's perspective. But that's actually some thoughts there And the thoughts that you're saying is true, that it talks about the characteristics of people, the point of view of people. Culture is actually what people think, what people believe, what people do in relation to how they view the world. Okay, so culture is not just about the artistic product, but it's about the belief, the idea that you learned, the idea, the set of life skills, everything that you learn from your community and is interpreted in how you view your life. It is important to note that actually culture is something that you learn. Okay, culture is something that you learn. Culture is not something that you inherit in your gene. Bukan berarti kita lahir sudah sebagai orang Jawa. Saya orang Jawa, karena itu saya berkelakuan sebagai orang Jawa. You are orang Jawa because you learn how to become orang Jawa from your parents. Because your parents, seeing the social situation, social events, observing the social events, from learning social events that happened around them, teach you how to be a Jawa, for example. Okay, so culture is actually learned. Okay, so if culture is actually learned, it is safe to say that our community culture might govern us, might govern our behavior. Okay, so it influences the way we think, the way we observe social events, the way we respond to that social events. That's culture. Okay, so how culture and language is then related, because culture is responsible on how the culture that you pick up, that you learn, responsible for this language behavior that you do. Okay, now because of that characteristic about the relationship between us as community member and culture, we learn culture from our community. That's at least it's safe to say that in your earliest stage you learn culture. Okay? It's not something that just happened to you. Even the simplest thing, like how do you actually which hand do you actually use to give goods to other people? Kalian pakai tangan apa kalau memberikan barang ke orang lain?
The right hand?
Yeah, the right hand. Oh, nggak yakin. Berarti ada kemungkinan pakai left hand. The right hand, I think. Okay, the right hand. It's almost very natural. Like it almost feels that it's given, right? Because it feels natural to give something by our right hand, right? But then it is something that we've learned and we've been taught since we're babies. Ingat kalau misalnya anak bayi yang nggak ngerti apa-apa, they didn't even have the capability to think, and when they're offered something and they're about to reach that using their left hand, ayo pakai tangan kanan. Since you were babies, you're taught to do so. You observe other people, how they make life, how they respond to social events, and that how you internalize culture and in relation to the community that you are in and that you've learned from and you observe. Okay, so that's why language, culture, they're related, because our language behavior is also influenced by the culture that govern us. It governed us because we learn culture from our environment. Okay, now there's another view though of seeing language and culture. In the previous view, we talked how culture is responsible for the driving of certain language behavior. However, two peoples, Sepper and Worf, which it was initiated by Sepper, but then it was developed by Worf, and then it became Worfian hypothesis, thinks that it is not culture that influenced language. It is not culture that influenced the product of language. It is actually the language that influenced the way we see our world. Okay, so what it really means is that when your language has limited vocabularies to address the world around you, then your worldview is also limited. It is as limited as the vocabularies that you have in that community. Okay, jadi kalau tadi culture mempengaruhi the use of the language, kalau ini kebalikannya. Our language, pemahaman kita tentang bahasa, itu mempengaruhi sejauh mana kita memahami our world. Sejauh mana kita have worldview. Gitu. Karena itu, Sepper and Worf thinks that, karena itu orang di berapa budaya itu berbeda, karena their language knowledge is different. Makanya kemampuan mereka untuk memahami dunia juga berbeda. Ada yang ada di satu kebudayaan dan tidak ada di kebudayaan yang lain karena they have limited number of words to express that. This, however, is a lot protested. Jadi banyak yang mengkritisi, termasuk saya juga bukan penganut ini ya, Worfian hypothesis atau sesuatu yang kita sebut sebagai linguistic relativism. And some criticism that are addressed to it is that, well, if you say that the ability of someone to understand world is limited due to of its vocabulary, then we have problems. Okay, we see problems in that hypothesis. Number one, how do you know that it is language knowledge responsibility that limits you from seeing the worldview, atau that makes people seeing the world differently? Bagaimana membuktikannya? Karena lebih mudah untuk membuktikan bahwa mengapa mereka berbeda, karena mereka ada di culture yang berbeda, cara pandang mereka berbeda. Yang kedua adalah if you limit yourself or if you limit your view only on the basis of how many and what types of words that you have, how someone would ever learn about worldview? Berarti mereka tidak akan belajar apa-apa. Itu their way of viewing world will not develop. Nah, itu ada criticismnya. And I think in sociolinguistic study, even the Worfian hypothesis is still a lot tested and also sometimes still write about this. I think dominantly people use the fashion that that culture is responsible for the fashion of language behavior, not otherwise. Okay. Okay, these are some areas in sociolinguistics. Yeah, later if you want to do research on sociolinguistics, you can take micro-sociolinguistics. Okay, micro-sociolinguistics itu you learn about variations. Okay, language variations. You observe language variations, and then you correlate that with social attributes, such as sex category, class, gender category, class category, or age. Itu kalau microlinguistic. Kalau not microlinguistics, but micro sociolinguistics. In macro sociolinguistic, ya, secara makro ini biasanya penelitian-penelitian that use wider community and wider data, bigger data. Karena yang mau dilihat adalah bagaimana masyarakat menggunakan itu on wider basis. Jadi bahasan-bahasan seperti language policy, language attitude, that falls into study of macrolinguistics. Linguistic anthropology, and there is overlap between linguistic of anthropology and also sociolinguistic. There is an overlap, a collision, because in sociolinguistics we also talk about ethnography of communication. Jadi kalau di sociolinguistics nanti, if you want to do a study, it's not only about variations, yeah, variations in micro variations, but also on the variations on communication strategy. Karena sociolinguistic, at the heart of sociolinguistics, it also talks about communicative competence. Jadi communicative competence itu apa? It's not only about how we use language, but it's also about how we use language according to the setting, according to the situation, according to the social realities that take place at that time. Okay, jadi penelitian-penelitian misalnya tentang interactional sociolinguistics, tentang ketika you have conversation, men and women, you want to see the distribution of turn taking. Siapa yang paling banyak menyela, siapa yang paling banyak diam, terus mengapa kok behavior seperti itu muncul, atau mengapa ketika mengutarakan sesuatu caranya seperti ini? Why do we choose certain fashions in saying things and others choose certain fashions in saying things? Itu linguistic anthropology dan sociolinguistics itu overlap di sana. Ya. And critical sociolinguistics will focus on how language is used to exercise power and privilege in society. Jadi harus dilihat dulu, harus berhasil dulu untuk framing bahwa di certain community itu ada unequal distribution of power. And this unequal distribution of power, realizingly or unrealizingly, are used by people to retain that power and privilege. Itu in critical sociolinguistics. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to skip this because it's actually methodologies ini berkaitan dengan the areas of sociolinguistics that we talk. Yeah, we're going to be, if we have time, we are going to be talking about this. I think Pak Hadi will talk about this, the correlational study, micro-linguistic studies, discourse analysis. Jadi seperti yang tadi, interactional linguistics, language behavior yang muncul dalam interaksi itu biasanya pakai ancangan discourse analysis. Sorry. Microlinguistic studies itu language study, attitude, linguistic policies, nah itu masuk dalam situ. And critical analysis itu in corresponds to this critical sociolinguistics. Yeah. Okay. Now data. Okay. What is your data? Nah, datamu apa? Datamu ya language use and language behavior. Nah, karena tadi we already talk apa data. Ya bisa dari yang paling kecil, yaitu realisasi phonology, sampai yang paling atas, yaitu utterances. Okay, communication strategy. Ya, lalu di mana saya bisa mengamati itu? Where do we get this data from? Documents bisa. Survey bisa. Survey itu biasanya untuk mempelajari persepsi, attitude itu survey. Survey ini cara mengambil data kuantitatif ya, hasilnya pun kuantitatif. Lalu bisa juga interview. Okay, misalnya penelitian tentang saya teman baca baru judulnya karena saya ingin itu baru terbitan 2020 dan ingin saya baca tentang language choices used by Chinese Malaysian CEO. Tuh ya. Asih kenapa bibirnya? Ini apa? Ini variabel yang mempengaruhi adalah gabut ya. Ketika kegabutan melanda, you do not know what you should do on the camera rather than playing with your mouth and checking if the mouth nerve system is actually okay. Okay. Anyways, yeah. Interview. Jadi caranya seperti apa? Kalau kamu you want to see perceptions, you want to see their beliefs on language choices, you do interview. So you also can do recordings. Recordings means I want to know how people use certain communication strategies. Misalnya, I want to know how people respond to compliments. I want to know how female and male students respond to compliments. Misalnya, how do you do that? Well, you record their conversations. Tapi biasanya seperti itu butuh desain gitu ya. Maksudnya desain, what kind of design? Kamu kan tidak mungkin nunggu orang berbicara gitu ya, apalagi masa COVID seperti ini ya. Tidak bisa kita jadi setan atau alias orang ketiga di antara dua orang yang berbicara. That's not possible. So these recordings itu juga ada desain yang how are we going to make this data to appear, itu ada sendiri. Ada juga experimental manipulation such as match case technique or verbal case technique. Nah, itu cara-cara mengambil data saja, cara-cara untuk menyediakan data supaya bisa kamu interpretasi in sociolinguistics. Okay, now, I'm going to skip this. Because I think this is going to be covered because it's going to take a very long discussion. Not skip. I'm going to give in brief. Jadi quantitative study itu adalah if you rely on what statistics can show you. Ya, jadi yang diambil itu adalah tren statistik. Jadi tren statistik itu tren angka. Misalnya, berapa persen perempuan itu menggunakan adjektif tipe ini, berapa persen laki-laki menggunakan tipe seperti ini. That's quantitative. Kalau kualitatif itu metode seperti interview dan lain-lain itu qualitative. Mixed method itu adalah ketika kamu menggunakan dua-duanya. Kamu menjelaskan tren statistiknya untuk melakukan generalization to draw conclusions on language patterns, but you also try to what's responsible for this trend to happen? That's mixed method. Okay. Now, that's the end of my discussion, a very brief introduction to sociolinguistics. Now, if you want to discuss, if you want to weigh in to contribute something to start our discussion, I would invite you to do so. I'm not going to stop the screen sharing just in case you want me to refer to certain slides, okay? Wait, I'm going to chat. There is a chat. If you don't want to talk, you can also leave questions on the chat. Adam, I do not understand. What is that? What happened to your phone? Gosong, katanya Adam. Adam yang mana Adam? Saya dikirimi juga. Soalnya he's sending it to everyone. He wants to let me know that his HP is gosong. What happened? Adam tidak ada di sini.
Ma'am, there's some blackout, so he cannot use his computer, and so he uses his phone. Because Zoom is a heavy application. Yes, it burnt his phone.
Oh my God! What a doom on my class. So he burned his phone in my class?
Not literally burnt, but it became very hot.
Oh, thank God it's not in its literal meaning.
No.
Oh, yes, ma'am, I have to turn off my camera because the Celsius hit 47. Okay, all right. But I thank God that it's not burned in its literal meaning. Otherwise, I would feel guilty. All right. Ya, nggak apa-apa lah. HP-nya yang panas, asal jangan otaknya yang panas ya. Lebih bahaya kalau hatinya yang panas, ya. Okay. Now, if you have some questions, I know that it's still what I'm explaining to you is embryonic. You will get to the detail weeks after this. But if you want to ask something, I would and comment something, I would like to invite you to do so. You can do it. You can do it directly, or you can also leave your questions in chat room. If you find it more comfortable, that's okay.
Can I have a question, ma'am?
Sure.
It's RC, by the way.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to scroll up so I can see your face. It's very important for me to see face when I'm talking to someone,
Okay.
so I can understand better. Yeah. Okay. RC.
It's actually not really a question, but making sure of some points that you have just explained. So you were saying that in order to learn or study about sociolinguistics, like it or not, we should know or at least familiar with the social backgrounds of the language that we study. And also, you said that if we learn about language, we also learn about the culture behind it as well. Can you tell me the example of this one? Because I find it interesting to know about this topic. Thank you.
I'm going to give, that also demands a long explanation, because our discussion will be more on the concepts, and we're going to get to its practical use later in the fourth meeting. So it's 3 weeks or 4 weeks from now. Okay, but okay, why do we have to know the background, the social background of the speakers, and possibly the explanation about the culture? Okay, mind you that culture is not just artistic characteristics. Okay, it's also about idea, our thoughts, how we basically view our world. Okay, now I'm going to give you an example. There is a study called linguistic landscape. Okay, so linguistic landscape is actually a study that sees the salience and visibility. Seberapa banyak dan seberapa terlihat certain language or languages on public display. Okay, jadi seberapa dominan bahasa atau beberapa bahasa digunakan di public display. Okay, nah, lalu in linguistic landscape only happens in a situation when in a multilingual community. Ya, linguistic landscape itu terjadinya karena komunitas itu sudah menjadi multilingual. Jadi yang digunakan tidak hanya satu bahasa. Oke, atau coba seperti ini deh. Kalau misalnya di Jember, kamu sekarang if you see the signs of business shops. Okay, what languages do you find? Bahasa apa saja yang kamu temukan di papan nama toko? Di Jember aja. Indonesian. Terus apa lagi? English. Terus apa lagi? Indonesia, English, Japanese, kemungkinan ya gompiyuk rek gitu. Bungkus only. Ada itu bungkus only. Itu ya. So from the data in linguistic landscape, you see a phenomenon where languages are used in certain fashion. Okay. Misalnya kamu menemukan di Jember, ya, Jember itu ternyata yang dominan muncul itu adalah bahasa Inggris dan bahasa Indonesia. Misalnya, bahasa Inggris dan bahasa Indonesia. Nah, kamu mau mempertanyakan, nah, wong Jember iki kan kakeane wong Jawa, most of them are Japanese or Maduris. Kenapa bahasa Madura jarang muncul di papan? Atau bahasa Jawa kenapa lebih jarang muncul daripada bahasa Indonesia? So there is less occurrence of Japanese than bahasa Indonesia. Kenapa bahasa Inggris yang di komunitas itu bisa dihitung dengan jari? Kenapa bahasa Inggris yang muncul di papan secara dominan? So from this fact we see that there is a contestation of language. Languages are used. Nah, nanti kalau belajar linguistic landscape kita belajar bahwa at least atau nggak usah pakai teori yang tinggi dulu lah. Maksudnya bukan teori yang tinggi, teori yang spesifik dulu ya. Jangan pakai teori yang spesifik. We know that language is used to construct certain identity atau certain affiliation. Loh, identitasnya siapa? Lawang orangnya nggak ada orang Inggris. Oh, ternyata mereka kemudian menggunakannya untuk construct modernism, gitu. Even though it's not indexing any community, any English community in Jember. Bukan untuk any English community, tetapi they want to show themselves as modern business, for example. Nah, these reasons might be different from one community to other community. Karena linguistic landscape data itu di semua ada. If you want to be precise of what makes it this way, you need to study who are actually producing it, why they're producing it. Because different social actors, when producing something on linguistic landscape, might showcase different reasons from different profile of social actors. Nah, karena itulah kita perlu mengetahui the background of the users. Yeah, that's one example. Okay. I hope that answers your question, Arsi.
That really helps, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions, if you have? Let me check the chat. Okay. Kosala asked about Chomsky. What's Chomsky idea or mind on linguistics? Okay, Chomsky idea on linguistics refers to, it tries to answer what is the knowledge of language. Okay, ya? Karena linguistic study is a study about language. So what kind of knowledge of language is actually we try to understand through the linguistic study. Nah, Chomsky proposes that the knowledge of language, if we want to know what's the form of language, okay, then we have to observe the language that is standard, that is used by the ideal speaker, and how this is generated by our mental process. Gitu. Now, thanks to Chomsky, actually, we're not saying that Chomsky that Chomskyan linguistics is a wrong perception. It's just a different ways of understanding the knowledge of language. Okay, Chomsky tries to see the forms of language that is produced by ideal speaker. Jadi, and it is then the embryo. It is then not only the embryo, that it is translated into what we know now. What we know nowadays into grammar. In grammar, we know that there are systems. Grammar has systems, right? How certain words are together with other words and cannot be together with that words. Which verbs, which auxiliary goes with these verbs, and etc., etc. So that's how Chomsky see grammar. Tuh. Implikasinya, the implication is, if you're using language that is not prescribed like the system or the right grammar, then it is wrong use of language. However, in sociolinguistics, we do not see language that way. We see that there are reasons why people do not use language in accordance to the grammatical rule. For example, For example, is the African American vernacular English. African American vernacular English has a lot of forms that are by all criteria of standard grammar are wrong. Yeah. For example, the use of the double negatives atau the use of the tag questions kayak gitu. Now, sociolinguistics are not interested in what is wrong on the basis of prescribed grammar, but sociolinguistics try to see why does it emerge in that community group. Khazanah. So that's how the Chomskyan linguistics is different from sociolinguistic point of view. I hope that helps, Khazanah. I think you can also find a better and if not deeper explanation in a lot of your linguistics books, especially Introduction of Linguistics about Chomskyan linguistics. Okay, I hope that helps. Okay, you're welcome. All right, do you have other questions? Or do you want to discuss things here? Oh, it's 4, okay. Okay, now you have, I'm going to give you time because it's time for you to make summary. What do you get from today's presentation and discussion? Please write down in a form of summary, okay? If you notice, I've already made an assignment folder for you where you can attach your summary. So please make sure that you comply with the instruction that I told you earlier. Do you remember what that is? Apa? Satu-satunya instruksi. Nggak ingat?
Handwritten.
Yes, perfect. Pakai tangan sendiri ya, jangan pakai tangannya temannya ya. Saya malas, tolong dituliskan. I will dictate to you. No. I think during the work from home, I sense that most of us perhaps do not really have enough exercise, at least exercise with your hands, okay, for some minutes, okay? So please attach your file to the assignment folder that I already put in MMP. Yeah. What you do is that I put you can put the image files or boleh difoto terus dijadikan PDF terserah. Yang penting saya lihat bentuk tulisan tangan. Okay, and make sure that your handwriting is readable. Jangan sampai tidak terbaca. Sama saja saya nggak bisa baca apa-apa. Try. Yeah, try. Okay. Now I'm going to end the class here because we do not have more questions that you asked, that you raised.
Ma'am, may I ask something?
Oh yeah, sure. I'm sorry, but who is speaking?
Faiza, ma'am.
Faiza. Okay, let me scroll down and try to locate where you are right now. Okay, Faiza. Yes, Faiza. What's the
may
question?
I scan the summary?
Sure, you can scan. You can just take picture of your summary and send it to me. As long as they are readable, then it's okay. Any way that fancy you, any way that is easy for you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Do we still have questions? I'm going to upload this PPT. I'm going to upload it in MMP right after this. Okay? And remember, the due date is at what time?
12 o'clock
midnight.
Okay.
this night.
Yeah, 23:59 hours. Yeah, jam 12 kurang 1 menit. Yeah. Okay, now you can leave the Zoom. I will upload this to your MMP.
Ma'am,
Yeah?
So there are no specific requirement for the document names or
No.
type?
You can use, I can do it in JPEG, PNG boleh, bentuk yang image files boleh. Kan di foto atau di scan ya. Atau kalau misalnya dari hasil foto you want to copy paste it to Word, saya sudah allow the Office documents too. It's also okay. Anyway, that's easy for you. I just want to be able to read and see it. Okay. So whatever ways you fancy to whatever files you fancy to attach, it's not a problem.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am,
Okay.
can I say something else?
Yes.
Close the class. Okay. Can I give you a little bit of advice? Not really an advice, but I need to bring this up to attention. Because some of my friends on the group were whining about how you talk really fast. So maybe you could slow down your tempo when you talk next week.
All right. So it's
up,
still fast for you. Okay, I will try to slow down. Or you can remind me.
Okay.
Okay, you can remind me because it's just sometimes it just happened unrealizingly. I tried to slow down. I think I slowed down, but then maybe it's not really what slows. People have different perception of what's slowing down. So you just need to remind me, and I'm okay with that.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry to brought this up, ma'am.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It helps us a lot.
Well, thank you, ma'am.
All right. Okay. Do you have other questions that you would like to say here? If not, then you can leave the Zoom and start doing your summary. I'm going to upload this to your MMP. You'll find it in your MMP in a few minutes. Goodbye, students. Thank you. I'll see you again next week. Happy summarizing. If it's really a happy event for you. I hope it is.
See you, ma'am.
See you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Have a nice day.
You too. Diva, Prayogo, Faiza, Shahrul. Goodbye. You can leave. I'm going to upload this. Save. Okay. I'm going to stop screen sharing first.